Crying or being fussy can be a sign a baby is hungry. Feeding time is a wonderful time to enjoy, and a full baby is usually a happy one. When you give a baby a bottle, hold his head slightly elevated. Don't prop the bottle up on something and leave the baby. An infant will let you know when he's had enough by falling asleep, not sucking as much, relaxing, or pushing away from the bottle. Babies who are old enough to hold their own bottles can sit in a high chair or other seat for feeding, but they shouldn't sit in a bouncy seat or a swing. Once a baby reaches about 9 months of age, encourage them to use a cup and a spoon. Bottles and sippy cups are fine as part of the meal or snack, but you do need to remove them before the child goes to the crib or play area. There are also things you should know about how to store baby bottles and food for the baby. Full bottles need to go in the refrigerator as soon as they arrive, unless you're feeding the baby right away. Label the bottles with the infant's full name and the date it was prepared, or the date the breast milk was pumped. Store the bottles in the coldest part of the refrigerator, not on the door. Before preparing bottles or food, wash your hands. Clean and disinfect the surface you'll be using to prepare the formula or food before you start. Do not use microwave ovens or crock pots to heat formula, breast milk, or baby food directly. You can, however, heat water, remove it from the microwave, and place the formula bottle in the hot water to warm it. Once a bottle is used or a jar of baby food opened, do not put it back into the refrigerator. Throw it away if it has not been used after 1 hour. Any full bottles of formula that have not been used can be returned to the child's parents at the end of the day. Taking care of bottles and food for these little ones helps keep them well nourished and happy, and you'll see the signs they've enjoyed a good meal. Young children fight their way through all kinds of colds, viruses, and childhood diseases. It's just part of growing up. But allowing a sick child to be around other healthy children can spread germs and diseases. So to keep more children from getting sick, you need to be able to watch for certain signs. The best time to do that is when children arrive and sign in. Take a good look at the child. Sometimes you can tell a child isn't feeling well just by how they look.
I would always encourage my staff to conduct what we'd call an arrival health check, where they would go and greet the child and the parent, get down at the child's level, and make general observations about how that child may be feeling that day. It's very easy. You can see immediately if a child may not be feeling well, if they're not acting in their day-to-day behavior.
Here's what you're looking for. If a child is showing any of these signs, they need to be separated from the rest of the children, and the parent needs to be notified to come pick up the child. A fever of 100 degrees when the temperature is taken under the arm, along with other signs and symptoms of illness like diarrhea, rash, earache, or a sore throat. A fever of 101 degrees or higher when the temperature is taken under the arm, even if there are no other signs the child is sick. Sores that are open, infected, or are not easily covered. Vomiting more than twice in 24 hours. An adult may try to explain the diarrhea or earache by saying the child is teething. Don't accept that as an explanation. Red eyes that are draining or have discharge. Lice, nits, or scabies. A rash that has not been diagnosed.
And sometimes it can be difficult when the parent's standing there that you identify that the child may not be healthy enough to stay. But you have to ensure the safety of the rest of the children as well as yourself. And you may want to suggest that the parent take the child home for the day.
You can make a big difference by keeping your eye out for a child who is not feeling well. If you can recognize the symptoms and take action, you may stop illness and infestation from spreading to others and keep more children healthy and happy. the smallest and the weakest, so children can often be targets, victims of child abuse. Now that you're working with children, you are required by law to report any suspected child abuse. It's not a choice you have, it's an action you have to take.
The way the law works now, we don't have to be absolutely certain that abuse or neglect is happening. We need to reasonably believe that abuse or neglect may be happening. At that point, it's best to make the call rather than just to worry about it.
The first time I had to report child abuse, it was a frightening and intimidating experience. I was unsure of myself. I felt afraid. I had a relationship with the family. But I knew it was important, not only because it was the law, but it was important for this child.
There are 4 different categories of abuse that we need to consider: physical, sexual, emotional, and neglect. Physical abuse can come from punishment that is too harsh or out of control, or from a situation at home that has turned violent. When a child is sexually abused, he or she is usually threatened as well, in order to keep the abuse a secret. Emotional abuse occurs when the child is verbally abused or even ignored for long periods of time. Neglect is when the parent or guardian does not take proper care of the child. Often stress or substance abuse, including alcohol abuse, can be a factor. Here are some red flags that are indicators for possible abuse or neglect. Burns, bite marks, cuts, bruises, or welts in the shape of an object. Torn, stained, or bloody underclothing, bruises or bleeding in the genitalia region, fear of a particular person or family member, a child that is constantly hungry, doesn't have clean, basic clothes, or clothing is unsuited to the weather conditions. The child withdraws from social activity, displays fear of adult contact, or even resists going home. Sometimes you may not see any of these red flags, but a child will tell you about something that is happening. This is important. You must not ask the child any questions other than what happened and who did it.
Listen very carefully to children when you come to worry that something has happened to them. Observe carefully their physical state, their emotional state. Write down everything you can about what they've told you, what you've observed, in as much detail as you can.
Never suggest what you think might have happened or press the child to give you details. Any investigation must be conducted by authorities, but as soon as you can, write down what you remember about what the child told you. Remember, as a child care worker, you are required to report all suspected abuse and neglect immediately. You or a team member must report to Child Protective Services and 911. First, if you think a child is in immediate danger, call 911 before you call the CPS hotline. Then, if you suspect abuse but do not believe the child is in immediate danger, gather and document all related information from sources other than the child. Your center will have forms you can use to document the situation. The forms have spaces for basic information about the child, their name, birth date, parents' names, home address, and telephone number. If a child told you about abuse, include the date, time, and names of every staff person who heard what was said by the child, and any other information like the child's emotional state or facial expressions. If there are physical injuries, you will need to describe in words the size, shape, color, location of any obvious injury. Notify your center director as soon as possible that you have made a report or need to make a report. It's often a good idea for the employee and the supervisor to work together on making the report. However, a supervisor does not have the right to tell you not to make a report you believe needs to be made. When you have your information in one place, you need to make the call to CPS. Having the form will help you explain in detail why you suspect that abuse is occurring. Be as specific as you can about the harm or danger to the child, since this helps CPS determine whether to conduct an investigation. Within 3 days, all phone calls must be followed up with a written report from your center to Child Protective Services and the Office of Child Care Licensing. No one likes to talk about child abuse, but it's not a problem that just goes away if you ignore it. Being informed about signs of abuse and how to report them will help you protect children in your care.